Welcome to our second session of the CAT PYQ series. And you remember that there is this journey that you and I started last week where we talked about CAT 24. Let me be in fact even more precise. We went ahead and looked at CAT 24 slot 1's first 12 questions. That is exactly half of that slot. And in this second lecture, we will go ahead and look at the remaining 12 questions of slot 1 so that you are able to go ahead and attempt the entire complete section and see how we think. So shall we start? Let's go ahead. So here is question number 13. I'm not using 1 so that the continuity remains. So this, as you can look at the directions and figure out, is an odd one out question. So let's read these together and then I'll take you through how I would approach it. So animals have an interest in fulfilling their basic needs, but also in avoiding suffering, and thus we ought to extend moral consideration. Okay, so this builds an argument for why we need to offer moral consideration to animals. Second, Singer. Okay, now since I read a fair bit of philosophy, and he's one of those contemporary philosophers that I've read a lot, I know that we are talking about a philosopher, but let's see. Singer viewed himself as a utilitarian. So, a philosopher who is a utilitarian will basically form his worldview on the basis of the utility of something, on the basis of the usefulness of something. Okay, and present a direct moral theory concerning animal rights in contrast to indirect positions such as welfarist views. Okay, so now imagine you can go out and do something good for somebody out of your desire to be out of your desire of welfare. So you are not obliged to take care of a person. It is not your duty. But if you do go and take care of that person because you believe that, hey, you should take care of that person, you are in a way holding yourself responsible for the welfare of that person, then that's one position. So you don't owe anything to that person, you do it out of the kindness of your heart. But then a utilitarian will say that, hey, if that other entity is somehow solving a purpose, serving a purpose, performing a utility kinds, then you need to go ahead and be accountable and responsible for that. Then that's far more direct. And that's what is being stated in the second sentence. Then he argued, so that's a clue, for extending moral consideration to animals because similar to humans, animals have certain significant interests. The event that publicly announced animal rights as a legitimate issue within contemporary philosophy was Peter Singer's Animal Liberation text in 1965. So this entire discussion, when did you argue this, where did you see this, all of these have to come from this. So in a way, this becomes the topic sentence. Then as such, we ought to view their interests alongside and equal to human interests, which results in humans having direct moral duties towards animals. So I very clearly see fourth and second and third talking about Singer's views. So we are essentially choosing between 1 and 5. Now 1 is very tempting because it is talking about their interests. But look at third. Third is saying that they have certain significant interests similar to humans. And if I look at fifth, it has as such, which allows me to connect it to third. Moreover, it also brings in alongside and equal to human interests. So if I were to link one of these two sentences with third, I realize that fifth is more closely related because of as such plus the human interest angle, whereas first can be connected, but it is not going to be as great a fit. So I would prefer accommodating fifth with this particular paragraph. In this particular paragraph and leave 1 out, and therefore our answer here should be option 1. Right? Let's move over to our next question now. This is a best summary of the paragraph question. So we will read the paragraph, then we will go to the answer choices and start a process of elimination. So let's start. Certain codes may of course be so widely distributed in a specific language, community or culture, and we learned at so early an age that they appear not to be constructed. The effect of an articulation between sign and referent, but to be naturally given. Okay, so what they're talking about is actually very simple. The language is complex. See, at the end of the day, what is a word? So for instance, if I look at this and say this is a pen or a marker, you realize a pen, a marker, these are codes. These are just some codes that we use that allow us to refer to an object or that allow us to refer to certain ideas or processes. That's about it. Now, what the author says is that some of these codes, that is, some of these words are very widely spread within a language-based community, within a community where people speak the same language. And you also learn those at a very early age. So as a result, when you think of that word, when you hear that word, you immediately think of the object that it refers to. It does not come to your mind that, hey, it is a code that is designed so that we could refer to something. That's what the first sentence means. So it appears natural to us. So natural in the sense that you feel that it is normal to call it with this particular or label an entity with a particular label. So simple visual signs appear to have achieved a near universality in this sense. Simple visual signs. So imagine you're traveling on a road and on that road you come across a board which has this arrow drawn. Now when you see this arrow, what does it mean? On a road, this means you're going to turn right. Now, no matter which part of the world you go to, you see this and you know that it is telling you there is a right turn ahead. Okay. So, some signs have become nearly universal, though evidence remains that even apparently natural visual codes are culture specific. So, there are some symbols that you would think that, hey, it should naturally indicate this. But in reality, even that can be culture specific. It may not indicate the same thing everywhere. Okay. However, this does not mean that no codes have intervened, rather that the codes have been profoundly naturalized. So what he says is that, okay, even though the codes appear natural to you, it does not mean that we did not create those codes. All it tells you is that they have been naturalized. That is, in that language community, they appear natural to people. So the operation of naturalized codes reveals not the transparency and naturalness of language. So if a code has become natural, it does not mean that the language is somehow superior. It simply means that the word has a depth, habituation and near universality. So since everybody knows it and they have become accustomed to it, that they find it natural. They produce apparently natural recognitions. This has the ideological effect of concealing the practices of coding which are present. So this basically means that because a word is widespread, you don't think of it as a word that was created to refer to an object. You just forget that there is this magic of codes happening on top of reality. And actually, philosophically, it's a very deep point. Have you ever wondered, what is this? What is this? That's a paper clip. What am I wearing? I'm wearing a t-shirt. These are two different objects, right? But the reality is, this is made up of a certain combination of atoms. This is made up of a certain combination of atoms. This person is also made up of a certain combination of atoms. Everything around us is basically nothing but atoms. There are no real divisions. Our words have been used to create that division, that distinctness. So the code that we have put on top of the reality. It may not give you the reality. Chaliye, let's go ahead and look at the options now. Learning linguistic and visual signs at an early age makes all such codes appear natural. Is it given? No. We are talking about only certain codes that appear natural. So this is a distortion of what the paragraph says. This naturalization of codes is the effect of ideology. No, is the ideology causing it? The universality has the effect of concealing the coding. The naturalization is not being caused by this, so even this is wrong. All codes, linguistic and visual, have a natural origin. Where does it say that it has a natural origin? Everything is basically code. So that's incorrect according to the paragraph. but some are so widespread that they become universal. This part is true. This is what hides the mechanism of coding behind signs. Yeah, but then this hides only for these some and not for the rest. So that generalization that is creeping into the second sentence can also be questioned. Let's have a look at C. Not all codes are natural, but certain codes are naturalized and made to appear universal. Some codes are made to appear universal, or they become universal because they are widely distributed and are learnt at an early age. That's a distortion. Ideology aims to hide. There is no aim of ideology given, it's just had ideological effect. There is no aim mentioned, that's an addition. Language and visual signs are codes. Check. However, some of the codes are so widespread that they not only seem naturally given but also hide the mechanism of coding. Check. It's not complete. There are a couple of ideas that are missing, but unlike A, B and C, whatever it contains is absolutely spot on, is absolutely right, and therefore this should be our best answer here. So you noticed, you read, you understand, you go, and then you start the process of elimination and you arrive at a particular answer choice with high degree of confidence. Here is the next one. This is your sentence placement question. So understanding Central Asia's role helps development make more sense, not only across Asia, but in Europe, the Americas and Africa. Okay, let's go to the paragraph. The nations of the Silk Roads are sometimes called developing countries, but they're actually some of the world's most highly developed countries. The very crossroads of civilization in advanced states of disrepair. Wow. It says that the developing nations are actually not developing. They're highly developed countries. It's just that they have fallen by the wayside. They require repairs, and those repairs have not been offered or done. So that's that. These countries lie at the center of global affairs. Can I put this sentence here? Difficult. Difficult because we are talking about continents and not countries. Wherever this sentence needs a noun that says countries. So if I leave it as it is, these nations can definitely be referred to by the help of these countries or these countries. But the moment I put this in, I won't have reference for this. I'll have only continents. So this gets ruled out. Running across, they have carried not only prosperity, this they is also talking about these countries and not these continents. So you can rule this out. But also death and violence, disease and disaster. The Silk Roads are the world's central nervous system. Again, if I introduce it here, that will make it disconnected from the Silk Roads discussion that is happening. So you can rule this out as well. And the moment I look at sentence after 4, you notice there is a pronoun that requires a noun. There is no singular noun in this sentence. You have Silk Roads, peoples, places. Where is that singular noun? When you introduce this here, you are bringing in the singular noun. And you also have this Europe or North America connection that will help you link it with the last sentence. So the best place for this, in fact, the only place where it can go in this paragraph is blank 4. That corresponds to option D. So let's mark that and we're done. Let's proceed further. So here is a passage. So when we read a passage, what is our goal? We want to read it fast and we want to get a mental overview out. So since I'd be speaking it out and explaining it, the process will be slow. But at the end of it, I'd talk you through the overview as well. So let's start. Oftentimes when economists cross borders, they are less interested in learning from others than in invading their garden plots. Gary Becker, for instance, pioneered the idea of human capital. To do so, he famously tackled topics like crime and domesticity, applying methods honed in the study of markets to domains of non-market life. He projected economics outward into new realms, for example, by revealing the extent to which humans calculate marginal utilities when choosing their spouses or stealing from neighbors. So now it has become clear that when you say economists cross borders, what it basically means is when an economist ventures into other subjects. So when he goes into other subjects, when he goes into other subjects, his intention is not in learning from those subjects, but in invading their garden plot. So basically he wants to go there and put economics at the forefront. in those areas as well. And this, for instance, basically gives you the idea. They talked about human capital. Human capital is, capital allows you to earn money. So he proposed this idea of human capital. He said that at the end of the day, humans can also improve their ability to earn money. Now imagine if I am illiterate, I can only do tasks which pay very little. But if I am literate, let's say if I am studied till 6th, 7th standard, then I can at least opt for jobs which are a rung higher. On the other hand, if I go ahead and do an MBA, I can be trusted with tasks which are far more financially lucrative for me. So if I study, I am in a way increasing my human capital. So that's the idea that he proposed. So, and to do so, he also talked about crime and domesticity. Domesticity is your family structure, etc. And in order to study these things, he applied the principles of economics. So one of the things that he did was that he said humans calculate marginal utility. So what is a marginal utility? So let us say that I run, in fact, I'm physics wala, right? So let's say that I run coaching institutes. Now, if I decide to open up a new branch of physics wala, I already have a lot of branches running. There is a certain cost that I incur. If I open a new branch, there will be some additional cost that I will incur. Because see, my material is already in place. I won't have to spend on that. But then I need to invest in that infrastructure. So if I invest in opening a new branch, what are the returns that I will get? So for every extra unit, how much of the revenue or the profits are going to increase? So if the revenue or the profits go beyond my costs, then I will spend on that new branch. Otherwise, I will not spend on opening that branch. So that's marginal utility. But then he applied it to even spouses or stealing. If I get married, it means costs. And in economics, costs are not just monetary costs, okay? There can be explicit and implicit costs. Implicit cost would also involve opportunity cost and a lot of other things. You can spend an evening at a bar with friends, but if you're married, chances are that you'd have to come back to that woman or that man. So that's also a cost. So all those costs. So he said that you would calculate all those costs and then think that, okay, will marrying be a net benefit for me? Or will stealing from a neighbor net benefit for me? At the same time, he did not let other ways of thinking enter his own economic realm. So it's an elaboration of this idea. He imposed his views on the other areas. He did not learn from other areas. He did not borrow from anthropology or history, but let observations of non-market economics inform his Homo economicus. So a Homo economicus, according to him, is a person who just looks at marginal utilities. Thinks in economic terms. Becker was a picture of the imperial economist in the heyday of the disciplines, bravura. So he was, so I mean, technically when you say cross borders, countries, when they cross borders, what happens? They get into forming kingdoms, empires. So it's like he also ventured into the other areas, and he basically acted as a king at a time period when economics was at its peak. So this bravura basically means impressive technical skill that is shown in your performance, your work, etc. So times have changed for the once almighty discipline. So there was a time when economics was very popular. Now we're saying that, okay, times have changed. So economics is no longer that popular. Economics has been taken to task within and beyond its rampart. When you take something to task, it means that you criticize it. So economics has been criticized within. Rampart is a protective wall that you build, a large wall that you build around a town or a castle, etc. to protect it. So as an economist also had a conceptual rampart. So if it has been attacked within, then there are people within economics who say that our principles are not right, and beyond its ramparts is even the other subject matter experts say that you guys are not right. So some economists have reached out, imported, borrowed and collaborated, been less imperial, more open. Consider Thomas Piketty and his outreach to historians. The booming field of behavioral economics, a very fascinating area, you will study it in B school. The fusion of economics and social psychology is another case, having spawned active subfields like judgment, decision making and a turn to experimentation, the field aims to go beyond the caricature of rational man to explain how humans make decisions. So he says economics was considered great at some point of time. Now there are a lot of people who've criticized it, and some economists have thankfully learned from others and developed new areas. And they no longer think that humans are just Homo economicus. It is important to underscore how this flips the way we think about economics. So this has changed the very way in which we think about economics. For generations, economists have presumed that people have interests, preferences that get revealed in the course of people's choices. So economists think that what you do reveals your choice. So what you prefer, your interest, is the cause behind your action. If you're hungry, you buy lunch. If you're cold, you get a sweater. If you only have so much money and can't afford to deal with both, your growling stomach and your shivering, which need you choose to meet using your scarce savings reveals your preference. Chances are that most of us will go for lunch. We'll at least have a meal. And then borrowing from the previous slide, maybe steal a sweater from the neighbor. Homo economicus. Psychologists take one look at this simple formulation and shake their heads. I mean, they're like, economists think that we are rational actors. Increasingly, even some mainstream economists have to admit that Homo economics does not always behave like the textbook maximizer. Maximizer is where you try to maximize your benefits. Irrational behavior cannot simply be waved away as extra economic expressions of passions over interests, and thus the domain of other disciplines. So they think that, if you believe human beings to be rational, then how would you justify irrational behavior that you see so very commonly in the world around us? So economists normally would say, okay, this is extra economic. There are times when passions take over your interests. But then some economists now, even the mainstream ones, say that, see, this approach is not right. We need to acknowledge that there is irrational behavior that exists. So this is one place where the humanist can help the economist, where humanist here essentially basically means people who study humanities. Otherwise, humanism is a completely different thing. That meaning won't fit here. If narrative economics is going to help us understand how rivals duke it out, fight it out, who wins and who loses, we are going to need much more than lessons from epidemiological studies of viruses or intracranial stimuli. Saying narrative economics is where you build a narrative, where you build a dominant theme prevalent in the society. So if you want that to help you understand what happens, you need more than study of epidemics or study of passions. Above all, we need politics and institutions. Schiller, the Nobel Prize winning economist, connects perceptions of narratives to changes in behavior and thence to social outcomes. You realize, when I was young, becoming a doctor, becoming an engineer was mainstream. The entire society said and thought that this is the way forward. When, until around 15 years ago, 20 years ago, MBA started picking up steam. 25 in fact, make that around 95, 97 is when the resurgence, when MBAs became mainstream, and for the next decade or so they ruled the roost. Until around 2008 nobody questioned MBAs. But then you notice nowadays when people think of MBBS or engineering, they're not as enthusiastic about it, probably because of oversupply or probably because how doctors are being treated. MBAs, there are certain questions that are being raised now on even MBA. So you notice all of these things. So the societal narrative is changing. So he's saying that it changes the behavior and thus social outcomes. He completes a circle that was key to behavioral economics and brings in storytelling. So you notice this narrative now becomes clearer to make sense of how perceptions get framed. This cycle was once mediated or dominated by institutions. The political parties, lobby groups, media organizations. Remember, these are the places that would engage in PR activities and shape that worldview of the society, that played a vital role in legitimizing, representing and excluding interests. Yet institutions have been stripped from Schiller's account to reveal a bare dynamic of emotions and economics without the intermediating place of politics. Okay, so if you look at this entire part, starts with talking about how economics ruled the roost, then economists had to accept the reality, then how our take on economics has been flipped, that is given in the next two paragraphs, and the last one focuses on Schiller and narrative economics, which was introduced in the second last paragraph. So let's get into the questions. The author critiques Schiller's approach to behavioral economics for which of the following reasons? So I think the only criticism is here that yet institutions have been stripped from Schiller's account. So which one captures it? Linking emotions and rational behavior without considering the mediation of social institutions? Yes. Ignoring the marginal role that media and politics play in influencing people's behavior? Is he ignoring? Is the role marginal? Media, politics, did that play a marginal role? No, they actually went on to play a vital role. Right? See this? So this marginal bit anyway makes it incorrect. Denigrating the role of institutions while creating a link between behavioral economics and perception. So he did that, but is he denigrating the role of institutions? Denigrating is where you say that their role is bad. What he has done is that he has ignored them. They have been stripped from his account. So it means that they don't even exist. So something that does not even exist obviously is something that you can't denigrate either. Relying excessively on storytelling as the main influence on the formation of perceptions? No. This is not offered as a criticism. The criticism is that he's ignoring certain institutions that have been a vital part. So through that process of elimination, we can say that A is going to be our best answer here. Let's move on. Times have changed for the once almighty discipline. First line of our second paragraph. We can infer from this statement and the associated paragraph that the author is being, okay, so we need to look at not just this line but the associated paragraph as well. So the associated paragraph, if we go back and look at it quickly, it basically means that economics is no longer as dominant as it was. Other subjects have also now made inroads and it has faced criticism within and without. So which option do you think captures it best? Critical of economists openly borrowing and collaborating? No, it is not critical of it, it supports it. Judgmental about the ability of economic tools to accurately manage crises? No, we are not talking about the other areas influencing economics. Disparaging of economists' inability to precisely predict market behavior? Not even mentioned in this paragraph. Sarcastic about how economists who earlier shunned other disciplines are now beginning to incorporate them? Yes, this captures the entirety of the second paragraph, and therefore this should be the best answer. So we basically needed to see which one of the four options comes closest to the second paragraph, and that's D. Here is the next. In the first paragraph, the author is making the point that economists like Becker had begun to borrow concepts from other disciplines but were averse to the latter applying. Did Becker begin to borrow concepts from other disciplines? Not at all. I mean, he actively was against it. Tended to guard their discipline from poaching by academics from other subject areas. Poaching by academics. Poaching is that some other subject matter expert comes in and then takes an economist and takes him to his field. Did Becker prevent other economists from moving to some other subject areas? Not mentioned in the paragraph at all. Used economics to analyze non-market behavior without incorporating perspectives from other areas of inquiry? Now this is definitely there in the first paragraph. That's actually the gist. Benefited from the application of their principles and concepts to non-economic phenomena? Becker benefited. He did not even take that Becker benefited from the application of their principles and concepts to non-economic phenomena. There? What is the there referring to? And did he benefit? Moreover, between C and D, even if I agree with D, I realize that it misses out on this second half of C, which is an important point in the first paragraph. So on the balance, I'd say that C is going to be a better answer choice than D. So let's rule it out and stick to C. And here is the last question. We can infer from the passage that the term Homo economicus refers to a rational entity who just thinks of maximization, marginal utilities. Which one captures it? Look at D. So the only problem with C is non-market choices. That's irrelevant. But D, on the other hand, captures this idea nicely and should therefore be chosen as our answer to this particular question. Works for you? Let's go ahead and look at our next question now. The passage given below is followed by 4 alternate summaries. Choose the option that best captures the essence of the passage. So let's see the essence. Scientific research shows that many animals are very intelligent and have sensory and motor abilities that dwarf ours. So many animals are better than we are when it comes to sensory and motor abilities. Dogs are able to detect diseases such as cancer and diabetes and warn humans of impending heart attacks and strokes. Elephants, whales, hippopotamuses, giraffes and alligators use low frequency sounds to communicate over long distance. So sensory motor abilities. Often many animals also display wide-ranging emotions. Now that's a new point. Including joy, happiness, empathy, compassion, grief, and even resentment and embarrassment. It is not surprising that animals share many emotions with us because we also share brain structures located in the limbing system that are the seat of our emotions. Okay, so let's look at the options. The advanced sensory and motor abilities of animals is the reason why they can display wide-ranging emotions. Is this because of their ability to display wide-ranging emotions? No, these are two disconnected things. They have these abilities, they also have these emotions. They are not, there is no causal relationship between the two according to the paragraph. So the moment you add this, that becomes wrong. How about B? The similarity in brain structure explains why animals show emotions typically associated with humans. Yes, but it does suffer from deletion. It is completely missing out on the sensory and motor abilities. See, animals can show emotions which are typically associated with humans. Yeah, but if I compare B and C, both of them suffer from deletion, but C has a part of B, it is missing out on this part, even this part. So C has even more deletion than B. So I can, if I compare the two, I can rule out C. Animals are more intelligent than us in sensing danger and detecting diseases. No, animals are very intelligent. Are they more intelligent than we are? No. It's their sensory and motor abilities that dwarf ours. They are superior to us in these two, not in terms of intelligence. So what it says is incorrect, plus it suffers from a lot of deletion. So the best answer choice as a result is B, because whatever B says is correct. Every other option suffers from deletion and what it says is also incorrect. So that makes it the best answer choice for us for this particular question. So that's question 20. So with that, now let's move over to our next question set, which is a passage. So we'll read it together and then we'll go and attempt these questions too. So the idea of craftsmanship is not simply nostalgic. Crafts require distinct skills, an all-round approach to work that involves the whole product rather than individual parts, and an attitude that necessitates devotion to the job and a focus on the communal interests. Their communal interests would basically be interests of the community and no religious angle here. So see, when we talk about craftsmanship, we talk about artists. And most of us, when we buy things nowadays, they are not really made by individuals. They are mass produced in factories. So normally now when we think of a craftsman, right? Come to think of it, I don't even remember the last time around when I got a shirt or a trousers stitched. Most of the things that I wear are picked up off the rack. And it's only the outfits that I get made to attend all these weddings in the family. They are the ones where I probably get them stitched. But and so the author is saying that this idea is nostalgic, as if being so when you say craftsmanship is nostalgic, you're saying that craftsmen are dead, and this idea is a very beautiful, good idea, but it existed only in the past and it does not exist in the present. However, the author questions it. The author says the idea of craftsmanship is not simply nostalgic. It is not just nostalgia. There are a lot of other positive things too. And that is why we think about craftsmanship. Essentially, the crafts concept seems to run against the preponderant ethos of management studies, which as the academics note have long prioritized efficiency and consistency. Craft skills were portrayed as being primitive and traditionalist. So when you talk about management studies, and you are in fact going to go ahead and study these things, so in a B school you learn how you can make a business scale, how you can make it profitable. So it talks about efficiency and consistency to that extent. Whereas because craftsmanship focuses on the individual, devotion, etc., management studies or initial people, at least the academicians, noted that craft skills were being primitive and traditionalist. So that's an old school thought and not the latest thought. Now, the contrast between artisanship and efficiency first came to the fore in the 19th century, when British manufacturers suddenly faced competition from across the Atlantic as firms developed the American system using standardized parts. So you notice, in craftsmanship, a single person designs the whole product, whereas if you look at the mass-produced things, so different people will design one part of the product, and those different people may not even belong to the same factory. There are times when you get stuff from outsiders. Think of any automobile company. They will probably have 50, 60 different vendors supplying them a lot of different parts. And then they assemble most of those things together at their plant and then they sell it off, right? So that's what is being talked about here. So the worldwide success of the Singer sewing machine showed the potential of a mass-produced device. This process created its own reaction, first in the form of the arts and crafts movement of the late 19th century, and then again in the small is beautiful movement of the 1970s. A third crafts movement is emerging as people become aware of the environmental impact of conventional industry. So you're saying that this contrast has been brought up multiple times in the past. There are three waves that are mentioned here. Then there are two potential markets for those who practice crafts. The first stems from the existence of consumers who are willing to pay a premium price for goods that are deemed to be of extra quality. The second market lies in those consumers who wish to use their purchases to support local workers or to reduce their environmental impact by taking goods to craftspeople to be mended or recycled. Okay, so who buys craft and why? That's given in this paragraph. For workers, the appeal of craftsmanship is that it allows them the autonomy to make creative choices and thus makes a job far more satisfying. So some people who buy it for these reasons, and people who produce it, they produce it because they find it satisfying. In that sense, it could offer hope for the overall labor market, let the machines automate dull and repetitive tasks, and let workers focus purely on their skills, judgment and imagination. As a current example, the academics cite the Agile manifesto in the software sector. So Agile is a technique that is used while managing projects. The pioneers behind the original Agile manifesto promised to prioritize individuals and interactions over processes and tools. So in a way, by bringing together experts from different teams, Agile working is designed to improve creativity. So it appears that Agile mechanism somehow automates dull and repetitive tasks and leave people free to try out their skills, judgment and imagination. But the broader question is whether crafts can create a lot more jobs than they do today. Demand for crafted products may rise, but will it be easy to retrain workers in sectors that might get automated, such as truck drivers, to take advantage? So here, now we are moving to the other side once again. Can crafts create a lot more jobs than they do today? So demand may rise, but can you increase workers? So for example, let's say because of those autonomous taxis, automated driving systems, people like truck drivers will lose jobs. But can we train them to become a crafts person? In a world where products and services often have to pass through regulatory hoops, large companies will usually have the advantage. So a single individual would at times struggle to clear all the regulations that are required by the industry. I'm in the education sector. If somebody wants to open a school, he requires around 86 regulatory clearances. So you require, a larger organization will probably have a know-how or will know how to engage those people who can get those 86 clearances. For a single individual running a small, tiny thing, I think that can be a challenge, and that's what is being alluded to here. History also suggests that the link between crafts and creativity is not automatic. medieval craft guilds, guild is a group, were monopolies which resisted new entrants. They were also highly hierarchical, with young men required to spend long periods as apprentices and journeymen before they could set up on their own. By that time, the innovative spirit may have been knocked out of them. Craft workers can thrive in the modern era, but only if they don't get too organized. Otherwise, once you form these guilds, you may run into those same problems again. So let's see. Which one of the following statements is not inconsistent with the views stated in the passage? So let's remove this not and this in. So which one of the following statements is consistent with the views stated in the passage? So 3 of these are going to be true according to the passage and 1 is going to be false. We just need to, or at least not true. It can be false, it can be irrelevant, not present in the passage. And that's the one that we'll go ahead and choose as our answer. So let's start. The arts and crafts movement was initially inspired by the American system of production. The very first one, when the Singer sewing machine came in. So yep, definitely true. Creativity in the crafts could be stifled if the market for artisan goods becomes too organized. True. The agile movement in software is a throwback to the tenets of the medieval craft guilds. The agile movement in software is a throwback to the tenets of the medieval crafts guilds. No. Craft guilds restricted entry and stifled creativity, whereas this movement was designed to increase creativity. So this is false. We need to support the crafts, only then can we retain the creativity intrinsic to their production. Yeah, this is something that can be termed as a recurring theme here. So the best answer that we have here as a result is option C. Then let's go ahead and let's look at the next one. The author questions the ability of crafts to create substantial employment opportunities presently because. So why is it that crafts will fail to provide a lot of opportunities? There are 2 things that are referred to. Number 1, can we train people to become craftsperson, truck drivers? And number 2, regulatory things. So let's see. Workers made redundant by automation are unlikely to opt for crafts related work. This is tempting, but it says unlikely. We are not talking about whether they want to or not. The question was whether they will be interested in it or not. Then next, crafts guilds tend to resist new entrants and are unlikely to accept large number of trainees. But craft guilds are a product of a bygone era. They don't even exist anymore. So you can rule it out. The regulatory requirements could make it difficult for small crafts outfits to compete. Yes. The low scale of crafts production will not be able to absorb the mass of redundant labor, not a point that has been discussed in the passage. So the relevant paragraph talked about 2 things. C is one of those things and one of those 2 things, and that is why C should be our answer here. Let's look at the next one. The most recent revival in interest in the crafts is a result of the emergence of all of the following except concerns about the environmental impact of. So basically there are people who want to buy crafts. Why? Environment is one area, so you can rule it out because it says except. A niche market for discerning buyers of quality products, not mentioned anywhere. Greater interest in buying locally produced goods, yes, that's one of the reasons. Support for individual creations as opposed to mass produced objects. So we are basically talking about B versus D. Niche market for discerning buyers of quality product. Let us just go back and check. So at least the quality bit is still mentioned. So because it is mentioned, we can definitely rule it out. Support for individual creations as opposed to mass produced objects. Now this is something that we don't find anywhere. And that is why this is going to be the best answer choice for us. All the 3 were given in that paragraph that we've just looked at. 24th, we can infer from the passage that medieval crafts guilds resembled mass production in that both. So what was the key tenet of mass production? Efficiency and consistency. So in which one of these 2 respects they resembled mass production? And they stifled creativity, right? So focused excessively on product quality, we don't know whether it's a trait of mass production or not. And for that matter, whether it's a trait of guild or not, did not always employ egalitarian production processes. Not a trait of mass production It has to be a trait of mass production and guild both. Did not necessarily promote creativity. Yes, mass production did that. Medieval craft guilds also did that. This is something that we can apply to both. Discouraged innovation by restricting entry through strict rules. It is true for medieval craft guilds, but it's not true for mass production, right? So even this can be ruled out. So the best answer that we have for us here is option C. And that's question number 24, which means that we have managed to go through the entire section. So that's what I got for you in this particular session. In the next one, we will pick up slot 2 of CAT 24 and start discussing those questions. And in the interim, if you need help with anything else, drop a comment below or do reach out to us through the app or through our Telegram groups, right? So take care. Have a great day ahead. I'll see you soon.